Hello there, Sally. Thank you so much for joining me to share some reflections on rural ministry with older people. Just wonderful to have you giving some thoughts to help people to focus on the webinar, the Positively Rural webinar on the 10th of January. And you're joining us from Wales and a beautiful rural community where you've ministered for many years, and you're just stepping down as the Anna Chaplaincy lead for the whole of Wales, where you've been working ecumenically, not just for the church in Wales, but with all the other denominations too, but continuing as a trainer, a very active contributor to the development of Anna Chaplaincy in Wales from next year. So Sally, can you just describe to us, paint a picture of the rural place where you are and where you've ministered? Just help us to understand it.
Well, I live in the Brecon Beacons. It's just a little bit above South Wales, and probably it's the bottom of Mid Wales, so in that area. It's a national park area. It has lots of mountains. So I live actually in the Black Mountains, but obviously the Brecon Beacons National Park has the three beacons in Wales, including Penafan, which is the highest mountain in South Wales. It is a really rural area with towns and villages spread every few miles. Crickhowell is where I am based, in the St Catws ministry area. And for the rural part of our ministry area, Crickhowell is the biggest in population, and we have about 2,100 people living here. But the other little villages and hamlets around where we minister in this ministry area are typically around 100. So Llangeni is one of our little churches, and there's about 100 people living in Llangeni. And then there's a very famous church in Patricio, which is a very holy place and a place of pilgrimage, and they only have 54 people living there. So as I say, it's a rural, and the population of the towns and villages varies a great deal, but none of them have got very large populations.
Thank you.
And
Sorry, Sally, carry on.
So the area I cover in our ministry area stretches either side of the Usk River. There are 6 churches along the Usk Valley, the Usk River in this part of the ministry area, and 3 on one side and 3 on the other. And then that area is about 12 miles along that part of the river. And then either side of the river, there are mountains on both sides, and up about 5 miles into the mountains on both sides, we have the other churches. So we also have a big town of 5,000 people in a post-industrial town, which I won't include in this little chat that we're having together, because it is a quiet and beautiful area. Many people come here to retire, and where I live in Crickhowell, 34.1% of the population is over 65, and that's fairly typical of the rural areas that I represent.
Thank you, Sally. So just tell us, what do you do in supporting older people in this amazing community where you live? What's your role?
Well, I've been involved in pastoral ministry for about 20 years, first 10 years as a layperson, and in 2014, I was ordained in the church in Wales to develop older people's ministry in this ministry area. And we minister to people wherever they are, whether they're in their own homes or care homes or retirement housing facilities, or for groups in the community, whether they're support groups or our dementia-friendly cafe. And what I've been doing really for the last 10 years is leading that ministry, doing a lot of visiting and care home visiting and taking services with teams But also making relationships. Really, the bottom of it is making relationships with the residents who live here wherever they are, and accompanying them and their families as they grow older, and then eventually maybe at the end of life. And funeral care and bereavement care is certainly part of the ministry. I've been spending time building up little teams around each of our care home facilities, each of our retirement housing, and also, as I say, some groups in our community, and building relationships with organisations, secular organisations in our community, and collaborating with them, all different sorts of organisations and people who work for and care for older people here.
We talk about rural communities having a lot of social capital. There's a real commitment to one another and very healthy levels of volunteering. How do you see that enhancing the lives of older people? And was it especially evident during the pandemic?
Well, yes, of course. The more people that you can have on your team, and also is better. And of course, because a lot of people come here to retire, then we have a fair percentage of people who are in the third age, who volunteer for all kinds of things. But that includes also our churches and our visitors and people who want to get involved. And in the pandemic, we all worked together. It was so in Crickell, there's sorts of people who I liaise with and who refer people to our pastoral team and to Anna Chaplaincy in general. Our volunteer bureau has a great deal to do with Crickell and the surrounding areas, which match the ministry area. And we, fortunately, the week before we got locked down, we put a card together of all the things that we could provide as volunteers. And it included, picking up medicines, doing shopping, posting letters, taking people to hospital appointments if there were, things that absolutely had to be done, although of course most of that was done on Zoom. So we had a card, I can't remember, but there was a lot of things, including pastoral care. So there was so if people wanted a pastoral phone call, for example, and a good example of how the volunteer bureau and the church work together is that in the churches we already have a system for dropping off leaflets at Christmas and at Easter with our services on. And so we were able to leave all these envelopes in the churches, and one person would go in there and do a road. So we got the information out to everybody in our area, which was really lovely. And we did work together, and I had some very lovely requests. Some of them were things like, do you know anybody who has jigsaws, because we're trying to get jigsaws to people, and this kind of, so it worked very, very well. So we did our pastoral care and lots of phone calls and support and materials from the church, but we worked very well as part of the community here.
That's
and
amazing.
All sorts of people were doing all sorts of things, but the church was very much included in it.
That's fantastic, Sally. And would you say you've noticed that there's distinctive spirituality among older people in rural areas? How is it expressed?
Well, I've been trying to think of this, because obviously to some extent spiritual care is meeting individual needs, but I think there is, and I think probably wherever you minister, you're ministering within some kind of culture. And here, because it's rural Wales, there are two things I think which stand out in terms of spiritual care for almost everyone that are distinctive. The one is the love of nature, and it's because of the beautiful area that we live in, and I'm not at all biased, but that everybody understands the beauty of the mountains, of the rivers, of the animals that we can all see out of our windows, particularly sheep, so that there is a lot of things that we can draw on for a spirituality in terms of nature and the beautiful surroundings we live in. And then the other thing that we is distinctive, I think, about this area, but and I'll just talk about perhaps other parts of Wales, is that we are still heavily influenced in our spirituality by Welsh nonconformity. And for our older people, regardless, I mean, anybody over 65, the influence that has been left, even if people are not going to churches, there are very few people who don't know choruses or hymns or Bible readings or prayers. I think we start from a place where people have known a time when they have known God. And, you know, you don't have to start explaining Bible stories or anything. But that is very much part of our Welsh culture. And even though we're in the valley, in a particularly, we're not in the industrial valleys where Welsh nonconformity was on every corner, you know, churches everywhere. That still has had a big influence on that particular generation. And so I think we have a lot to draw on, really.
Amazing. And Sally, obviously there are some challenges living in a rural area. What would you say are some of the key barriers to people living well in their later years if they live in a rural community like yours?
Well, I think the real challenges are to do with um, transport. People can become very isolated, and that really is for any kind of service, whether it's church, healthcare, for shopping or anything. So, you know, and then there is lots of time spent for those who want to care for people in our community in travelling, you know, so that those are our big challenges. And you know, some of our older people can do online shopping, but not, you know, and we do have local shops who will deliver, etc., etc. But transport is a big issue for us here, and it does make people isolated. So it's really important we go to them. I also think because we are living in an area where there's a great deal of farming, that there are some people who find it very hard to accept help. And so there's a lot of relationship building that needs to go on before people can accept help. A particular kind of independence that they're very reluctant to let go of. So, as I say, I think those are probably our biggest difficulties. But we also have, I was going to say, we also have some very positive things about living in a rural area, in that our relationships are generally very stable. So we have a lot of people who have lived here for a very long time, and our networking is very good. And we also have people who come in and retire and stay, you know, for the duration. So we don't have the turnover of people. We can make very good relationships with people. So we have, in some ways, that time to actually be grow relationships where we can have really trusting and loving relationships. So
yeah, that's a real bonus, isn't it? And I'm sure, having described the sparse population, the topography of the hilliness, and having small clusters of people, that this shapes your ministry and how you do community chaplaincy under the Anna Chaplaincy umbrella. But you know, what's distinctive about being an Anna chaplain in a rural area?
Well, I think there is probably more sense of community. I don't have anything to compare it with, but I don't think there's more of a sense of community. So people gather in small groups. So they might gather in a village hall. And people in the little villages probably would rather have something in their village hall than to try and get to something a bit further down the mountain. So it's ministering to really small groups of people where they are. It's, as I say, it's very hard to get together to do a big thing unless you're going to provide a lot of transport and carers to go with it. So I think the distinctive natures is the small groups in the communities where they are.
And quite a lot of travelling for you, I guess. The chaplain has to be quite mobile.
Couldn't do the job without a car.
Exactly.
I
So
think
just
that's definitely
absolutely key, isn't it? So just a final question, Sally. What's your dream for spiritual care for older people in rural communities?
well that the people who are living here absolutely know that spiritual care is on offer through the churches. They often know that there is help, secular help, and they get some help with that. I don't think that people always feel that if they went to a church or contacted a church that they would get help. And of course, that's where they will get the spiritual care that they need and often are seeking and absolutely need to express in older life. So my dream would be that people will understand what Anna Chaplaincy is and know that we are here for everybody and that we can help.
Oh, thank you
and
so
that we
much.
can share God's love with them.
Indeed. Thank you so much, Sally. That gives us such a brilliant overview of what life in ministry in a rural community with older people is like. Thank you.